Beastars is a mature manga series licensed by Netflix to be one of their original anime series and first aired on March 13th outside of Japan. One of the first things people notice about Beastars is probably that it's the quote-unquote furry anime or Zootopia ripoff. But although Beastars does feature anthropomorphic characters, they are far more human-like than the characters from Zootopia are designed, but not necessarily in the way they act. But that's getting a bit in the spoiler territory, so we'll talk about that later. Probably the second thing people notice about this show is that it's 3D animated rather than the traditional 2D style that most animes are in. I'm usually not a huge fan of 3D anime, but even so, I thought the character models and animation were amazing. Speaking of amazing, can we talk about that intro? I mean seriously, how often is that you have an opening that's stop motion animated or even a different style from the show? The story of Beastars is interesting and captivating. It makes you want to watch more and see what happens to these characters and keeps you wanting to understand how this world works. The world becomes more complicated and complex once you get deeper into the series, and not as simple as it seemed at the beginning. Not only is the world incredibly interesting, but the individual characters and their development is incredible. I love seeing how the different animals interact and how the herbivores treat the carnivores. The anime stars a gray wolf named Legoshi, who's a second-year student in the drama club at Cherryton High. He's not timid, but he's definitely more reserved most of the time in things, like his emotions and actions. I said most of the time for a reason, and again, we'll get into that later. Our secondary main character is a pure white dwarf rabbit named Haru. Haru is a fourth-year student with a bit of a bad reputation between the herbivores. Without giving too much away, the show follows Legoshi, and we get to see the way he interacts with people around him. Legoshi is an interesting character, and ultimately his attitude doesn't drastically change by the end of the season, but rather he comes to be more comfortable with the fact that he's a gray wolf, and becomes a bit more confident in himself. Unsurprisingly, Haru becomes Legoshi's love interest. Well, I mean, kinda. Again, we'll get into that later. We don't get to see as much of Haru, but she's still very prominent. Frankly, I think she changes more than Legoshi does in the way she acts towards him. We learn that since she's a dwarf rabbit and quite small, even though she's fully grown, people tend to treat her like a child. So when Legoshi treats her just like another person, she comes to really respect him despite their physical differences. Okay, this is a warning to everyone that doesn't want spoilers because I'm going to talk more in depth about each episode and give you my thoughts on it. So without further ado, don't say I didn't warn you, and let's get into it. We open with two unnamed characters, who we later find out to be Legoshi and Haru. Legoshi almost attacks Haru, and tells us that this is the moment he discovered his instincts as a wolf. We cut to the next scene, to see an alpaca named Tem, racing down a hallway covered in blood, who is devoured right on campus. Unsurprisingly, this frightens a lot of students. For about half the episode, the show wants us to believe that Legoshi is the one that devoured Tem in the accident, but we later find out he's actually quite kind and generous, but just a bit awkward. In this episode, we're also introduced to Louie, a red deer that's incredibly popular amongst herbivores. Right after we're introduced to him, we're then introduced to Haru, and see how she's bullied by some of her roommates, and get acquainted with her bad reputation. That night, as Haru walks home, Legoshi catches her scent, which triggers his wolf instincts. He chases after her, and pounces on her, but is able to restrain himself from devouring her, and we've come to this scene from the very beginning of the episode. Being one of the most important episodes, the world and characters are presented to us, and we're left wanting to know, while Legoshi didn't just eat Haru. We're shown how Legoshi is able to control himself and how Haru is able to escape. Legoshi struggles with his actions of the night prior, but eventually he's forced by the drama club to go pick up some roses from the gardening club, of which Haru is the only member. Luckily for Legoshi, she seems to not remember him, and when asked about the bandage on her arm, she tells him she doesn't remember how it happened. After Legoshi helps her, we become more acquainted with her reputation. The episode shows us more of Haru as a character, although the ending may throw you for a loop. We're actually able to begin to see how Legoshi and Haru, a large carnivore and small herbivore, interact with each other. It's certainly a great episode to help you start understanding Legoshi's developing feelings toward Haru, and also gives us insight into how he's a bit socially awkward and overthinks things. After Haru realizes that Legoshi isn't there for the reason she thought he was, it's a bit too late to say anything since Legoshi's already run off without the roses he needed. Later on before the play, we learn everyone in the drama club has some kind of secret, even a seemingly perfect red deer Louie. We also learn of Louie's frustrations with Legoshi because he acts weaker than he is since he's a gray wolf. After hearing Legoshi's side of the story, Louie seems to understand him a bit more. After some more world building, Legoshi reflects on what happened with Haru and decides he wants to see her again. Before he goes on stage, Louie preps himself and the drama team up for the play, although his words don't necessarily match his thoughts. It also becomes more apparent that he has some kind of leg injury. Despite his leg injury, he gives a captivating performance during the play, although after the curtains close, he collapses on the ground and we get to hear his inner monologue, and it seems like he hasn't realized what's happened. We see Louie in the hospital, and it's revealed to us that he performed the entire play with a broken leg and won't be able to take the stage for tomorrow's performance. He chooses Bill, a tiger, to take his place in the lead role. Legoshi finds out Bill has rabbit blood and a vial on him and attacks him on stage. As the two fight, the audience believes that they just made changes to the play. Bill wouldn't have stopped if it wasn't for Louis coming onto the stage and killing his character to end the play. This episode really shows us a more aggressive side to Legoshi that we haven't seen since the first episode. Although this episode gives us some character development for Louis, I still wish they gave us some more at the same time. Legoshi admits to one of his friends that he has a crush on a girl, although he doesn't reveal anything about her. Meanwhile, we see Haru giving some attention to Louis in the barn. This is the first time we've made aware that Louis and Haru have any kind of connection, and it becomes more prevalent throughout the series. Back in the drama club, they have to get ready for the presentation for the Festival of the Meteor, which will also become super important later on. After drama club, Legoshi runs into Haru and scares off some girls who are picking on her, and she offers to go to dinner with him. During the dinner scene, we're treated to a bit more world building on how carnivores stink, or herbivores and herbivores stink of carnivores. During their walk home, Haru finally tells Legoshi her name since he was too timid and afraid to ask. This episode has so much world building, and I think it's one of the best episodes in this series so far. We're introduced to Juno, another gray wolf who's a first year that just joined the drama club. Later in the drama club, we're told the carnivores have to go into the city for supplies and are warned to stay away from the black market. Legoshi seems to be the only one confused when they tell them to do that. After they gather supplies, they get lost in the city and can't seem to find the train station. Legoshi stops to ask a homeless herbivore for help, and it turns out he sells his fingers to carnivores for money, and they find out that they're right in front of the black market. Bill definitely seems a little too excited about this man and his fingers. Not happy about any of this, Legoshi runs through the black market and collapses in the alley at the end of it. He wakes up chained and muzzled. We're then introduced to a giant panda named Gohin, who is more or less a bodyguard for the market. We learn where the meat from the black market comes from and why it's necessary. After a talk and some advice from Gohin, Legoshi meets back up with a classmate and heads back over to school. We're treated to a slice of world building, and we see what student chickens do with their eggs, and we see one student's story in particular. When the actual episode begins, the animation style changes to demonstrate how Haru feels when she's with Louis, and we see the relationship begin. As soon as Louis is about to leave the barn, he opens the door and is shocked to see Legoshi. Seemingly a bit jealous that Legoshi went to visit Haru, Louis tells him to go support Juno since she's a part of his own species. Juno definitely doesn't hide her feelings towards Legoshi, but even though he admits she's attractive, Legoshi has zero interest in Juno. While preparing for the festival, Legoshi talks to Haru a bit and sees Louis and Haru becoming affectionate toward each other, and then he understands what's going on. He becomes insanely jealous and admits his love for her to himself. This is a real turning point for Legoshi's emotions in this series, because he admits his feelings to himself. Legoshi and Haru go to the train station to head back to school, and in the middle of an argument they were having, people start to question if Legoshi is being aggressive toward Haru, a small herbivore, so they both run away in fear of being arrested. After they get away, Legoshi tries to tell Haru that it was him that almost devoured her. However, Haru admits to lying when she said she didn't remember how she got her arm injury, although she still didn't know it was Legoshi who attacked her. Cutting to the next day in the drama club, we learn that Juno's become quite popular in the club. After the club meeting finished, she confronts Louis and tells him how she wants to be the Beastar, since it's clear to everyone Louis was going to be granted that title. This is the first time we see a more aggressive side to Juno, not physically aggressive, but she certainly will do what she has to do to get what she wants, even admitting to being greedy. Cut again to later on at the Festival of the Meteor, a blackout happens. After making sure the drama club herbivores are safe, Legoshi goes to find Haru. However, Haru mistakes him for Louis, and that's when we really get a handle for her true feelings. After the lights come back on, Juno sees them together and realizes that Legoshi has feelings for Haru instead of her, and this seems to make her more determined to get what she wants. This episode starts with Louis' childhood backstory. We learn that when he was younger, he was going to be sold as meat to be devoured. After a mysterious steer named Ogma sees Louis trying to defend his cellmate, he buys him to adopt him. This is the first time we start to realize Louis isn't as perfect as he's portrayed to be. Back at the festival preparation, Legoshi tries to confess his feelings to Haru, and she tries to ignore him, but they promise to meet at sunset during the festival tomorrow to discuss their true feelings for each other. Shortly after this conversation, Haru is kidnapped. A moment later, we learn she was kidnapped by a lion gang called Shishigumi. This gang is so powerful that even the mayor tells Louis there's nothing they can do. Unsurprisingly, she was kidnapped to be devoured because of her pure white coat. When Legoshi learns of this, he wants to go save her and tells Louis. Louis tells him there's nothing they can do about it. Louis' true colors are shown in this episode. It's clear to Legoshi and us, the viewer, that he cares more about his status as the Beastar than Haru. We see Legoshi back in the black market trying to find out what Shishigumi is, but it seems as if no one wants to hear the name. He runs into Gohin, the giant panda. Despite learning about Shishigumi, Legoshi is still determined to go save Haru. After almost being killed without even entering the Shishigumi hideout, Gohin comes in to help Legoshi during his endeavor to save Haru. After fighting his way to the top floor of the building, Legoshi finally reaches Haru and the episode leaves us on a cliffhanger. Legoshi becomes the most aggressive we've ever seen while fighting the lion that was supposed to eat Haru. While they walk out of the building, the lion tries to kill Legoshi once more, but surprisingly, Luga comes up behind him, holds him at gunpoint, and finishes off the job that Legoshi didn't, not wanting to come to terms with how the world is because of his past. He decides to let the other lions devour him. After eating and finding a place to stay for the night, Legoshi finally tells Haru that he was the one that almost devoured her. She tells him that she has a feeling it was Legoshi all along, and she forgives him. Some other stuff goes on in the hotel room that I'd rather not get into detail in on this channel, but it's definitely a moment that brings them closer together, but emotionally and physically. After getting back to school, Juno comes to visit Legoshi in the infirmary, and she is definitely becoming more aggressive with her emotions. She runs into Haru on the way out, and tells her that she is going to prove that she's better than Haru at the Festival of the Meteor. After her performance at the festival, Juno calls Legoshi on stage, ruining him, telling Haru how he truly feels about her. Juno even tries to force him to light a candle with her to be put in the meteor, something that's supposed to be done by couples. We cut to Haru walking away, and see that Legoshi ran after her after rejecting Juno's advances. After talking to her and telling her he's still not sure if he likes her or sees her as a prey item, Haru tells Legoshi she'll wait for him until he's more comfortable around her. Being the final episode in this series, it keeps us on a bit of a cliffhanger because we as the viewer want to see them together at this point, but we also understand how Legoshi's been struggling with this the whole time. It's a great way to end off the season, and I can't wait to watch more. Anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy this review of Beastars Season 1. It was a truly amazing anime and definitely different than the typical ones I watch. I definitely want to do more reviews here in the future, so if you enjoyed, recommend me an anime to review next. With that being said though, I'm Mystic Sage, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the future for more anime content.